Mount Spurr, a massive volcano in Alaska, is showing signs of unrest, and experts warn that an eruption could be imminent. With increased seismic activity and other warning signs, the possibility of an eruption is becoming more real. In this hypothetical scenario, we'll explore what would happen if Mount Spurr erupts tomorrow, how it would impact Alaska, disrupt daily life, and reshape the landscape in an instant. If Mount Spurr in Alaska erupts tomorrow, the first signs would likely be noticeable hours or even days before the main event. Scientists at the Alaska Volcano Observatory would detect an increase in seismic activity, small earthquakes beneath the volcano, signaling that magma was rising toward the surface. These tremors would become more frequent and intense, with some strong enough to be felt in nearby areas. As pressure built up beneath the mountain, the ground might begin to bulge slightly, a sign of magma forcing its way upward. In addition to seismic activity, changes in the volcano's summit crater would likely occur. A small lake that formed at the peak in the summer of 2024 might begin to heat up, steam rising as gases escaped from the magma below. Fumaroles, venting openings in the earth, could release more sulfur dioxide and other volcanic gases, creating a strong rotten egg smell in the air. These warning signs would trigger emergency alerts warning residents of south-central Alaska, especially in Anchorage, about a possible eruption. The region would quickly move into a state of heightened alert. The National Weather Service would begin monitoring wind patterns to predict where volcanic ash might fall, while emergency agencies would issue advisories on how to prepare. South Central Alaska residents would be urged to gather emergency supplies, including masks to protect against airborne ash, extra food and water, and plastic coverings to keep ash out of homes and vehicles. Airlines operating at Ted Stevens Anchorage International Airport would start rerouting flights to avoid potential ash clouds, just as they did during past eruptions. The uncertainty surrounding when and how an eruption might unfold would create tension. Volcanic eruptions are notoriously difficult to predict with exact timing, and while Mount Spurr has erupted before, each event is different. The last major eruptions in 1992 came in 3 separate bursts over 3 months, with little warning between them. If tomorrow's eruption follows a similar pattern, the first explosion could be the beginning of a prolonged period of activity. As the day progresses, Mount Spurr might begin releasing small ash bursts, an early indication that magma was nearing the surface. These bursts wouldn't be catastrophic, but would send fine, volcanic dust into the air, carried by the wind toward Anchorage and other nearby areas. Social media and news reports would be flooded with images of the volcano, spewing dark smoke into the sky. Some people might rush to stock up on supplies, while others would wait anxiously for official updates. By nightfall, the eruption could be fully underway. The sky over the Tordrillo Mountains might glow with an eerie orange light as molten rock burst from the summit crater. A towering column of ash, possibly tens of thousands of feet high, could spread outward, carried by the jet stream. The people of Anchorage, just 75 miles away, would soon experience the effects as volcanic ash began to settle over the city, covering streets, cars, and rooftops in a fine, sand-like layer. Tomorrow's hypothetical eruption would be unlike anything most Alaskans have seen in decades. But as the first signs of disaster appeared, the real question would be, how bad could it get? As the eruption of Mount Spurr escalates, the effects would begin spreading far beyond the immediate area. With a towering ash cloud now rising into the atmosphere, the biggest concern would be its impact on air travel. Volcanic ash is not like ordinary smoke. It's made of tiny, jagged rock particles that can severely damage aircraft engines. Pilots flying in the region would receive urgent warnings to change course, and within hours, Ted Stevens Anchorage International Airport would be forced to suspend operations. Other smaller airports in south central Alaska, including those in Kenai and Homer, would likely follow suit. The last time Mount Spurr erupted in 1992, the ash caused major flight disruptions, and this time the effects could be even more widespread depending on wind patterns. Inside Anchorage, daily life would quickly be upended. The ashfall would continue coating roads, buildings, and vehicles, turning the city into a gray, dust-covered landscape. Even a thin layer of volcanic ash can be dangerous. It clogs air filters in cars, damages electrical equipment, and makes breathing difficult, especially for those with respiratory conditions. The city's emergency services would begin distributing N95 masks, urging residents to stay indoors as much as possible. The weight of the ash could even threaten rooftops if the eruption continued for an extended period, leading to potential structural damage. Further west, closer to Mount Spurr itself, the situation would be even more dangerous. While Anchorage and other populated areas would mostly face ashfall, the remote terrain surrounding the volcano could experience far deadlier hazards. Pyroclastic flows, fast-moving waves of scorching gas, ash, and rock would race down the mountain slopes at speeds over 100 miles per hour, obliterating anything in their path. These flows are among the most lethal aspects of a volcanic eruption, capable of burying entire landscapes in superheated debris. In addition to pyroclastic flows, another major threat would be lahars, massive mud flows created when volcanic heat melts the mountain's glaciers. Mount Spurr is heavily covered in ice, and as the eruption intensifies, that ice would rapidly melt, mixing with ash and rock to form thick, cement-like rivers of debris. These lahars would rush down nearby valleys, potentially damming the Chukachotna River and backing up water into Chukachemna Lake. If enough pressure built up, the resulting flood could send a surge of water downstream, threatening remote areas and eventually reaching Cook Inlet. Authorities would be closely monitoring river levels, knowing that past eruptions of other Alaskan volcanoes have triggered catastrophic flooding. Warnings would be sent out to anyone in the region, though in such a sparsely populated area, there would be little time to react. For those living in remote cabins or working at fishing camps near the inlet, the combination of ashfall, mud flows, and potential flooding would create a life-threatening situation. Despite the chaos unfolding on the ground, the full impact of the eruption wouldn't be immediately known. Volcanic eruptions can last for days, weeks, or even months, meaning this could be just the beginning. Scientists at the Alaska Volcano Observatory would be analyzing every piece of data they could gather, trying to determine whether this was a short-lived explosion or the start of a prolonged period of activity. The last major eruptions in 1992 occurred 3 times over 3 months. If Mount Spurr followed the same pattern, Alaska might be facing long-term consequences. As the eruption of Mount Spurr continues, the long-term effects on Alaska's environment and infrastructure would begin to take shape. The immediate chaos of the ashfall, flight disruptions, and lahars would give way to new challenges, ones that could last for months or even years. The air quality across south-central Alaska would remain dangerously poor, with fine volcanic ash lingering in the atmosphere. This ash, made of tiny glass-like particles, would be hazardous to breathe, especially for children, the elderly, and those with respiratory issues. Hospitals in Anchorage and surrounding towns would likely see an increase in patients experiencing breathing difficulties, eye irritation, and other health problems linked to airborne ash. And beyond human health, the impact on Alaska's wildlife and ecosystems would also become a growing concern. The ash blanketing the landscape would seep into rivers, lakes, and streams, affecting water quality and potentially harming fish populations. Salmon, a vital part of Alaska's fishing industry and ecosystem, could struggle to survive if their spawning grounds became clogged with volcanic debris. In past eruptions, volcanic ash has led to mass die-offs of fish and other aquatic life due to changes in water chemistry and reduced oxygen levels. This disruption to the food chain could have lasting consequences for the many species that rely on these waters, from bears and eagles to seals and whales in Cook Inlet. In the mountainous regions closer to the volcano, the weight of the accumulating ash could trigger landslides, sending massive amounts of rock and debris crashing down valleys and into rivers. These landslides, combined with ongoing lahars, could alter the landscape permanently, reshaping river channels and destroying habitats. The once pristine wilderness of the Tordrillo Mountains could be left scarred for decades, its slopes buried under layers of hardened volcanic deposits. The economic toll of the eruption would also become clearer. With Ted Stevens Anchorage International Airport shut down for an extended period, cargo shipments would be severely disrupted. Anchorage serves as a critical hub for international air freight, particularly between Asia and North America. Any prolonged closure would lead to significant financial losses for airlines and businesses that depend on the flow of goods. Stores in Anchorage and other cities could start experiencing shortages of certain imported products, while the state's fishing and tourism industries would suffer major setbacks. The summer tourism season, which brings thousands of visitors to Alaska's national parks and remote lodges, could be thrown into uncertainty if the eruption continued into the warmer months. Efforts to clean up the ash would be a massive undertaking. Crews would work around the clock to clear roads, highways, and airport runways, but the fine, powdery nature of volcanic ash would make it a persistent problem. Even after visible layers were removed, Strong winds could stir up settled ash for months, making it feel like the eruption never truly ended. Vehicles and machinery exposed to the ash would require constant maintenance, as the tiny particles can grind away at engines, clog filters, and corrode metal surfaces. With the volcano still active, geologists would be working tirelessly to determine whether the worst was over or if more eruptions were on the way. In past events, Mount Spurr's eruptions occurred in multiple stages, sometimes months apart. If seismic activity beneath the volcano remained high, it could signal additional explosions to come. The uncertainty would weigh heavily on residents, who would have to decide whether to stay put or temporarily relocate until the danger passed. As Alaska braced for what could be an extended volcanic crisis, one thing would be certain: Mount Spurr's eruption was not just a single event, it was a disaster with lasting consequences. The question now was how long those consequences would continue. In the weeks and months following Mount Spurr's eruption, Alaska would begin the long process of recovery. While the immediate danger from ashfall, lahars, and pyroclastic flows would have passed, the long-term challenges of rebuilding and adapting to the new landscape would become the focus. The region around the volcano, once a popular destination for backcountry hikers and snowmobilers, would remain unstable for years. Large sections of land would be permanently altered, with deep ash deposits, collapsed riverbanks, and newly formed volcanic features making navigation dangerous. Scientists would continue monitoring the volcano for any signs of renewed activity, as secondary eruptions or aftershocks could still pose a risk. One of the biggest hurdles in the aftermath would be the impact on infrastructure. Even after roads and airports were cleared of ash, lingering particles in the air would cause ongoing issues. Fine volcanic ash is notorious for infiltrating ventilation systems, damaging electronics, and wearing down mechanical parts. Homes, businesses, and public buildings in Anchorage and beyond would require extensive cleaning and repairs, with some structures possibly deemed unsafe due to ash accumulation on rooftops. Power outages would also remain a concern, as ash buildup on electrical equipment could lead to failures in the grid. Water contamination would be another major issue. With ash washing into rivers, lakes, and reservoirs, water treatment facilities would need to work around the clock to ensure a safe supply for residents. In more remote areas where people rely on well water, many would find their sources compromised, forcing them to rely on bottled water or government-provided resources. Farmers and ranchers in south central Alaska would also face difficulties, as volcanic ash can severely impact soil quality, making it harder to grow crops or maintain grazing lands. The economic ripple effects of the eruption would continue to be felt for months, if not years. Alaska's fishing industry, already dealing with declining salmon populations, would struggle as volcanic debris disrupted marine ecosystems. With the tourism sector taking a hit, businesses that rely on visitors, hotels, tour operators, and local shops would face financial hardships. Insurance claims from property damage, business losses, and vehicle repairs would surge, creating delays and complications for residents trying to rebuild. Internationally, Mount Spurr's eruption would serve as a reminder of the ever-present threat of volcanoes, especially those in the Pacific Ring of Fire. Scientists around the world would analyze data from the event, using it to improve monitoring systems and refine eruption forecasting models. The lessons learned from Mount Spurr could help other regions better prepare for similar disasters in the future. Despite the challenges, Alaska is no stranger to extreme conditions. Its residents have endured earthquakes, wildfires, and past volcanic eruptions, always finding ways to adapt and move forward. With time, Anchorage and the surrounding communities would recover. Though reminders of the eruption, layers of ash in the soil, altered landscapes, and the occasional aftershock would remain for years to come. The event would go down in history as another chapter in Alaska's long relationship with its powerful and unpredictable natural forces. While the eruption of Mount Spurr may eventually fade from the headlines, it would leave a lasting mark on the region, both physically and in the minds of those who lived through it. Scientists would continue watching the volcano, knowing that one day, whether in decades or centuries, Mount Spurr would awaken again.